Minimum height requirement.
5'10".
Would you exclude obesity?
Yeah.
Minimum income.
60,000.
What do you think it is? Take a guess.
Like 2%.
Yeah, 2.1%.
Wow.
So knowing that, would you be willing to like lower your standards or what?
No. I'm not lowering my standards for anybody. Point blank, period.
What do you think the guys have scored that we've asked around here?
Higher than I guess my initial assumption would be. I would say maybe around like 10%. Or am I very wrong? Is it like 50?
46% is what the guys scored.
You know, I was trying to give the guys the benefit of the doubt, but I guess my assumptions are correct.
Minimum height.
6 feet.
Yeah, that's where they get you. Would you exclude obesity?
Absolutely.
Minimum income. So
I'm gonna say at least 200.
200 grand?
You can be 30 years
Oh
old and
my
make 200
goodness.
grand.
Take a guess at what percentage of men fit this
2%.
criteria. 2%? Much lower. It's 0.049%. Cool.
All right, is this going on the TV?
Black American women are the most masculine women on earth. And so like a lot of the times black women, like they'll always ask me like why I'm not dating a black woman. And it's like, you know, if I'm going outside and I'm fighting off demons and dragons and trying to provide like the best lifestyle for my future like children and my significant other, like I don't want to come home to another battle at home, right? I don't want to be sleeping next to someone who is like domineering, who is like very like outspoken, like very masculine. Yeah, I definitely prefer Thai women for sure. As I've been traveling around and interacting with real women, with foreign women, I realized that it's not just chivalry that's dead in the U.S., but it's literally love that's dead in the U.S., right? Because in the U.S., it's like, as far as the sexual marketplace goes, it's like everything is based off of money, right? It's like if you can't afford a Birkin bag for me, like don't talk to me. If you can't take me to the steakhouse in Malibu, like don't even look my way. If you're not dressed a certain way, I don't even think you can be in my presence, right? And that's the sort of mentality that these modern women have. And so it's gotten to the point where modern women have essentially become akin to prostitutes. But I would take it even further and say that modern women are worse than prostitutes, right? Because if you're interacting with a prostitute, you're going to negotiate and come to certain terms that you both agree on, and then once those terms are met, she'll leave, and then you never have to talk to her again if you don't want to, right? It's way less of a headache. Whereas if you're dealing with a modern woman, later on she might try and come after your assets, she might try and trap you with pregnancy, right? And so it's gotten to the point where it's literally more wholesome and more genuine to interact with a prostitute than it is to interact with a modern woman.
Like to say, call Elohim La, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yasharahla, Hashem Kakadash, the bonds of the apostles of Els Great Millstone, peace, citation, hope for elect Shalom. And through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yasharahla, I made title this video. These are the main reasons why men are neglecting you, an Americanized woman. And as you can see in the photo here that I put in this video, it says group of ladies make a list of places men shouldn't take them on the first date. And it says, here is a list women absolutely refuse to go on a first date to, and thank you to the ladies who reached out to me to help me on my list. So this is by Duval Promo, and I seen this on social media a few days back, so I decided to do a video on this, especially when I saw that this other post was a group of men started to make the list. But let's read this list for the woman, the shit that she made. So now it says, first, Cheesecake Factory, 2 Applebee's, 3 Chili's, Chipotle, Olive Garden, the movies, your house, any fast food chain, Buffalo Wild Wings, Wingstop, Red Lobster, a buffet, IHOP, Denny's, the gym, church, Starbucks, coffee dates, ice cream dates, family functions, movie night, Netflix, Hulu, etc. Somewhere that requires a long drive, bowling, nightclubs, hookah bar, a bar for just drinks, Waffle House, sports events. So, it seems as though, I don't know who this woman may be in this photo, but it seems as though like a lot of the times when you're dealing with an Americanized woman, they seem to have like their priorities that are too, outstanding for the average men. And honestly speaking, they act as though like they're in the power seat of thinking that they have all type of rights to choose the men that come into their life. And that's just straight up wickedness. And Esau is the one that gives them this power, of course. So that's the reason why these women feel as though they have the right to say what type of men that they want in their life. But they don't truly know the type of men that belong in their life. Because as you can see, how bugged out a lot of these women are. They want to pick and choose what type of men that they want, and then when it doesn't work out, they want to become gay, and then next thing you know, they pick and choose the wrong men that's in their life. And after all of the stupidity, they still blame a man. So as you can see, this is what it says on the bottom photo. It says, group of men make a list of the kinds of women you should never take on a date. Number 1, single mothers. 2, women with tattoos. 3, women who dress like this in public. 4, sex workers, OnlyFans girls, mattress actresses, strippers, call girls, escorts, Instagram models, bottle girls, etc. And those are definitely the women with the highest requirements, that have been in those fields. Number 5, woman with an IG page. Number 6, woman with non-ear piercings. 7, woman with purple hair or any other unnatural color hair. And yeah, definitely, especially when they have wigs and weave, and it's different colors, you definitely have a lot of spirits on those women. It says number 8, woman with HEAUX friends. And number 9, models who market to men. 10, women who travel regularly. 11, women who drink liquor regularly. 12, women with weak/absentee fathers. Yeah, because if they don't have the father in the house, scriptures say the curse of the mother rooted out foundations, but the father establishes foundations, because the father's the head of the household. He's pretty much the head of woman. And when Esau pretty much went as far as pushing that whole single mother household, benefits thing in the 1980s, using Gloria Steinem to push that feminism shit amongst the so-called black people's communities, used the so-called black woman to basically start that whole feminism in their communities. And that's what made a lot of these women from that time on, and even to now, started kicking a lot of men out the house, more than ever. And it got worse in the 21st century. And it says women who live alone. That's number 13. And 14, women with party voice, quote. And 15, women on dating apps. 16, women who have been on Fresh and Fit. 17, women with list. 18, women who have been engaged. 19, divorcees. 20, American black women. Wow. And 21, woman raised in the West. So they're just basically saying women in general, and that's beautiful that these group of men are starting to understand that they're starting to know that they're the prize. And that's the thing. Ultimately, when you come into the truth of knowing that you're Israelite, you start to basically gain that ruling class mentality. Of course, there's certain things that you have to go through, in this world when you're dealing with women, and then certain things happen, and then you eventually learn how to apply wisdom, based on everyone's experience, because everyone's experience is different, of course. But for the most part, it's pretty much scriptural that this is the reason why you seek to serve the Heavenly Father more than you seek to, serve and please women. You know what I mean? Because these women are all jacked up in the head, especially over here in America. That's the reason why men in America are starting to wait on their vacation to time periods in their job. Like, let's say they get the month off, or they get a few weeks off here and there, around these times in this season. So what they do is they decide to say, you know what, let me save up my money for this time, go out overseas to another country. Like, they go out to mainly other third world countries, or maybe even second world countries, or sometimes it's even first world countries where the feminism is not really that bad, like you have it to where you got men traveling to Europe, passport bros traveling into Asian countries, or maybe somewhere in Latin American countries. they're basically touring, and what they're doing is that they're starting to realize that the atmosphere of women out there they have way less requirements, right? You could take them out to any restaurant that's pretty decent, and it's not, too costly. It's pretty much fits your budget. But these women over here in America, it's like they don't want that shit. Anything that fits your budget. If it fits your budget, and it's like it happens to be like outside of what a average man could handle to pay for, then they consider that as, a high quality men that pretty much could cater to what these women want. But the thing is that, like, these women, they don't know what they truly want, and at the same time, while they don't know what they truly want, they pretty much have like the desire of a black hole. So they're just gonna want to desire a lot of, things that may not even truly even fit your budget. And even if you have all that you could give to these women, all the shit that you could pretty much supply her, she's still not going to be satisfied. And they're always going to still find an excuse to cheat on you no matter what, because they don't want to settle down. They claim they're going to settle down with a man. Like in that video, this bitch talking about, one of them was saying that a man having 60,000 and she would never pretty much lower her standards for a man. You see what I mean? And I bet you majority of the times the women that say these things can't even cook and clean, so it's cut to the point where it's crazy that number 20 says black woman, American black woman, because you could look at black women in, let's say, other countries, let's say those countries are specifically like third world countries or second world countries where the feminism is not really too bad, like it's very low, like you wouldn't even notice the feminism there. Those women over there will be a lot more in a better state of mind than the black woman over here, and that's why brothers to the spirit say that the black woman ain't gonna make it, because of the fact that she's just a straight up demon, and she's the top pioneer for being an advocate of Satan, which is a so-called white man. She's the top devil's advocate. And the feminism is so fucked up in America at this point. It's like you got even the Edomite bitch, even these so-called white women that are in college or whatever the case is, or let's just say they haven't even gone to college, just the Americanized white woman in general has become so fucked up to where it's almost just as bad as the black woman. So, but at least like when it's coming to the heathen woman, to some extent, they a little bit are easier to handle than dealing with the black woman in general. And even when you look at these red pill platforms, you see that there's a lot of Edomite men on those red pill platforms that pretty much can't handle dealing with the Americanized Edomite bitch anymore, and they pretty much are venting about the type of woman that's in America. And you definitely best believe that you got the so-called black man that's like seeing that with their women, with the so-called black woman, that you cannot like deal with these women at all. Like it's getting to the point where it's like you gotta hop over that fence and not build with these women anymore. And pretty much the fence is already down any damn way, so there's no fence to really hop over, at that point, because these women just don't want to deal with you and they despise you. They truly hate you. It all goes back to the curses anyway. I'm gonna bring it out in the scriptures, and the famous scriptures that happened with the curses of the so-called black, Hispanic, Native American woman, but mainly the so-called black woman, because you see it to this day, and especially in America, says Isaiah chapter 3 verse 16, moreover the Lord saith, because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making tinkling with their feet. Therefore the Lord will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts. And I'll skip down to verse 24. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle a rent, and instead of well set hair baldness, and instead of a stomacher a girding of sackcloth, and a birding instead of beauty. Right. So, when it's coming to a lot of these women in general, they don't have that natural beauty, especially the so-called black woman. At one point, they was very beautiful to look upon, naturally. And it's like the Lord eventually over time, he took away their beauty. And that's the reason why they have a heavy set of makeup. And it's even got to the point where these women in America are so fucked up. You got an ugly woman that act just as bad as the skinny woman, the ugly fat woman. At one point, Apostle Gabar, remember the beloved elder Apostle Gabar, he will always say that when it's coming to the so-called black woman, like, there was a point in time when he was growing up, he said that he remembered that the woman that used to be, let's say, like, this rating from a 1 through a 10, you got it to where, like, if you're below like a 5 is like the average, 5, 6 is like average, but if you're below like a 5, you're considered to be unattractive, to the average man, or whatever the case is. But beauty's really in the eye of the beholder, they say. So, but for the most part, if you was to look like, let's say, a 2 or 3 or 4, you used to pretty much be like unattractive. You had, let's say, to prove that you could pretty much, like, you have to prove how you could attract a man with your personality or your characteristics, so to say, like the things that you could do. Like, at least if you don't look like an attractive woman, you could attract a man with the qualities of a woman, like cooking and cleaning, knowing how to shut up when a man is upset, knowing how to cater to the man. But it's like, you have ugly women in America that's even more proud and prideful than the woman that actually look good in America. That's the most fucked up thing that you ever see. And I remember growing up, at one point I used to see, like, let's say at the time when I was in elementary school, even growing up from there, I remember at one point the black woman had a little bit of virtue. I remember that, and they were pretty much desired, like, the type of guy that you are if you had like nice eyes. Like, let's say you have a nice eye color, you got long eyelashes, like pretty much me growing up, I remember, because this was like me, I'm talking about growing up. So you used to get, like, let's say, certain attention from females or so, because you got things that attract them, like the nice hair, which pretty much, like, I have like wavy curly like hair, and I also have like light brown eyes, which they thought was hazel, but told them like, now it's light brown, and the eyelashes. And even some point in middle school, I remember that used to be a thing as well. That woman will pretty much like you because of the type of guy that you look like, and this is just over the course of me growing up. Now it's like to the point where women don't even care about all that shit because of the reality TV show that they be seeing so much, like, growing up. And it's just the fact that you have a lot of these celebrities that are starting to push this whole bad bitch era, this whole baddies girls club and all this other bullshit. So now these women are starting to realize, like, they want to desire more in a man. They want to see a man for what he can do for her that the average man can't. And there was this other bitch, other Edomite bitch in the video talking about how a man has to have a requirement of, let's say, the financial requirement is he has to have like $200K a year. Yeah, that's how much he has to make, just to support her. So these women are really delusional. She almost made the woman that requested for $60K a year, she almost made her sound like a better option, to be honest. And let me bring out 1 Timothy chapter 5. I'm gonna start at verse 10. Well report of for good works, if she have brought up children, if she have lodged strangers, if she have washed the saints' feet, if she have relieved the afflicted, if she have diligently followed every good work. But the younger widows refuse, for when they have begun to wax wanton against Hamashiach, they will marry, having damnation, because they cast off their first faith. And the first faith goes to their husband, because their husband is their God, basically. That's your Lord. And yet you have these women that claim that they're married to Christ, claim to be Christian women married to Christ, but yet they over here moving like the rest of these women that consider themselves to be witches. And these women are into like tarot card reading, they're into that black magic, they're into hoodoo. And this is mainly the so-called black women we're talking about that mostly are in those things. And then you even have the Latina Hispanic women also into the the Santeria, so they're heavy on the witchcraft too. And it says verse 13, and withal they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, and not only idle but tattlers also, and busybodies, speaking things which they ought not. Now therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guard the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. And these women definitely give a lot of occasion to the adversary. And this is Americanized woman, especially the so-called black woman out of all Americanized women. And verse 15 says, for some are already turned aside after Satan. And that's a lot, when you consider the type of woman that we have to deal with in America. Majority of these women on average expect to have a man that's 6 feet tall, 6 figures, got a six-pack. They expect so much. And there was statistics of people saying that that's less than 1 or 2% of men that have a 6-figure income, or just the average requirements that these women request for. The average outstanding requirements that they request for, that's like less than 1% of men. And if these women were really spiritual enough to understand that when it's coming to the most rarest men that you're going to ever find is a man of the Lord, if you really understand how precious that is for a man to have the knowledge, wisdom, understanding of the truth, like a lot of men in America, just the men in the world, don't have that understanding. Esau claims that there's 8.1 billion people in this world, and when you look at the 144,000, divide that over 8.1 billion people, and you're gonna see a fraction is way less than 1%. And that's honestly just an estimate, so only the Lord knows the true fraction, about how rare and how precious his men are. And it's like these women, they're so carnal, they gotta see it to believe it. So they have to see certain phases of Jacob's trouble so that they could really finally accept that that they really need a man in their life, and that they have to really accept that Isaiah 4:1, because these women, they claim that they want a man for herself, and then when they see a guy that's down with it, they feel as though like they don't want that type of guy, but yet they still go for a guy that deals with other women. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just a whole bunch of confusion. And this is why over in the East, majority of the times when you see women over there, you got it to where like the fathers will appoint their husbands, mainly in the Middle East. But over here in America, that's, really looked down upon. And that man that was speaking in one of the other videos, dealing with a Dominican woman, I believe, that he was dealing with, he pretty much mentioned about how the dating world in America is just so bad to where, it's such a transactional thing, and it's like, it's to the point where it's more sincere to date an escort than it is to pretty much date an average Americanized woman. And that's a sad fact to admit. And there's even an article talking about most young men are single and most young men are not, by Daniel DeVites on February 2023, February 22nd, 2023. It says more than 60% of young men are single, nearly twice the rate of unattached young women, signaling a larger breakdown in social, romantic, and sexual life of the American male. Men in their 20s are more likely than women in their 20s to be romantically uninvolved, sexually dormant, friendless, and lonely. They stand at vanguard of an epidemic of declining marriage, sexuality, relationship that afflicts all of young America. And quote, "We're in a crisis of connection," said Niobe Way, a psychology professor and founder of the Project for the Advancement of Our Common Humanity at New York University, and quote, disconnection from ourselves and disconnection from each other, and it's getting worse. In the worst case scenario, the American men's social disconnect can have tragic consequences. Young men commit suicide at 4 times the rate of young women. Younger men are largely responsible for rising rates of mass shootings, a trend some researchers link to their growing social isolation. And pretty much saying this from outside the article, that's the incels that, do all that mass shooting because they can't get laid. And majority of those incels are mainly Edomites. And it says in the article now, societal changes that began in the Eisenhower years have eroded in the patriarchy that once ruled American home, classroom, and workplace. Women now collect nearly 60% of a bachelor's degrees. Men still earn more, but among youngest adults, the income gap has narrowed to $43 a week. Scholars say the new era of gender parity has reshaped relationship dynamics, empowering young women, and in many cases, removing young men from the equation. And quote, women don't need to be in long-term relationships. They don't need to be married. They rather go to brunch with friends than have a horrible date, said Greg Matzos, a couple and family psychologist in Los Angeles, who recently penned a viral article titled "What's Behind the Rise of Lonely Single Men." Recent years have seen a historic rise in the unpartnered Americans, particularly among the young. The pandemic made things worse. Let me see. It says, as of 2022, Pew Research Center found 30% of U.S. adults are neither married, living with a partner, or engaged in a committed relationship. Nearly half of all young adults are single, 34% of women, and a whopping 63% of men. Not surprisingly, the decline of relationships marches astride with a decline in sex. The share of sexually active Americans stand at a 30-year low. Around 30% of young men reported in 2019 that they had no sex in the past year, compared to about 20% of young women. Only half of single men are actively seeking relationships or even casual dates, according to Pew. That figure is declining. And quote, you have to think that the pandemic had an impact on some of the numbers, said Fred Rabinowitz, a psychologist and professor at the University of Redlands who studies masculinity. Young men are watching a lot of social media, they're watching a lot of porn, and I think they are getting a lot of their needs met without having to go out, and I think that's starting to be a habit. Even seasoned researchers struggle to fully account for the relationship gap between the young women and men. If single young men outnumber single young women nearly 2 to 1, then who are all the young women dating? Some of them are dating each other. 1/5 of the Generation Z identifies as queer, and research suggests bisexual women make up a large share of the young adult queer community. Young women are also dating and marrying slightly older men, carrying on a tradition that stretches back for more than a century. The average age at first marriage is around 30 for men, 28 for women, according to census figures. Heterosexual women are getting more choosy. Women don't want to marry down to form a long-term relationship to a man with less education and earnings than herself, said Ronald Levant, a professor emeritus of psychology at the University of Akron and the author of several books on masculinity. In previous generations, young women entered adulthood in a society that expected them to find a financially stable man who would support them through decades of marriage and motherhood. Over the 1950s and 1960s, that pattern gradually broke down, and today it is all but gone. Women are tiring of their stereotypical role as full-time therapists for emotionally distant men. They want a partner who is emotionally open and empathetic, the opposite of the age-old masculine ideal. Today in America, women expect more from men, Levant said, and unfortunately, so many men don't have more to give. And it says the same emotional deficits that hurt men in the dating pool also hamper them in forming meaningful friendships. 15% of men report having no close friendships, a 5-fold increase from 1990, according to research by a survey centered on American life. And quote, men are less naturally relational than women, said Richard Reeves, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, whose new book of Boys and Men has drawn wide praise. And also says social circles have been shrinking for men and women, especially since the pandemic, but men struggle more. 30 years ago, 55% of men reported having 6 or more close friends by 2021. That share has slipped to 27%. And yeah, that's it on that article. So that pretty much shows you that with East South society that he has structured in America over time, many people are starting to basically move away from the whole marriage and building, family, bonding with family, because this whole society that's pretty much shaped after Esau, is completely wicked and satanic. It's part of the population agenda anyway, because like Aaron Russo was talking to Nicholas Rockefeller in one of those videos that he did with Alex Jones, where he was exposing about the meeting that they had. He mentioned about Nicholas Rockefeller told him about the purpose of feminism was not really meant to basically allow women to be in the workforce. It was mainly meant for having both parents working, which is the man and the woman, and also taxing both genders as well. And at the same time, when both of them are working now, they're gonna have their kids to be not homeschooled anymore, but mostly in the public school systems now. And now they're gonna start hearkening to the state. And when you look in that book, George Orwell, 1984, and there's also a movie about it as well, it's a dystopian society that has the whole families are hearkening to the state, like the woman in the family, like the mothers, the fathers, and the children, and the children are going to be the mostly affected because they're going to grow up to accepting that. And this is all influences from the serpent coming from Esau himself, just like what he did to Eve in the garden. Oh, you don't need a man, you could become a career woman, and that's the ideologies and philosophies that he wants to push upon, just women in America in general. Because the real way you control the family is you gotta attack the weaker vessel, attack the woman and the children, and use the woman to put her children against the man and feel as though she could compete against her man, feel as though your man is oppressing you, and that's basically the tactics of the serpent Esau. That's why scriptures say that we're not ignorant of Satan's devices. It's got to the point where when these average women in America now, it's like they don't even want to go to a restaurant, that an average man would usually go to, a few times throughout the month, like the restaurants that are famously advertised. They expect some 5-star restaurant. They expect some vacation at a 5-star resort, and they really act like they're worth more than what they truly are, because of this whole feminism shit. They feel as though they think that they're queens, that they rule above men. And in that time in Jacob's trouble, your ass ain't gonna be worth a can of beans, because like, bitch, you hardly worth a McDonald's meal, you hardly worth a kid's meal at McDonald's. That's something that they need to fucking understand. Yeah, it's damn near got double-digit, triple-digit body counts. Some, I wouldn't be surprised if it reaches quadruple body counts, especially if they're in the field of being an escort or whatever. And this is the main reason why Esau created that school system and started putting, women in the schools and things of that nature, because that's an environment where they can experiment. See, women working outside the house, that's pretty much outside their environment, and their environment is to be in home. Just like that song that Lil Durk has, like Homebody, even though that nigga's bugged the hell out because he mentioned drug sex in the song. Nothing wrong with sex, but there's definitely, a problem with using drugs and things of that nature. But the point I'm making is about that song, pretty much, where that word homebody pretty much means, a person that likes to pretty much stay at home, and is perceived as adventurous, and that's the spirit that women are supposed to be in. And the book of Sirach, chapter 25, tells you pretty much not to ever give a wicked woman liberty to get abroad. Because you best believe where they say they're going on this trip, they're going on that trip, or so for their business, going on a trip to this country, for their job or whatever the case is. They're going to be out on social media, twerking their ass off and flirting with other men. But yeah, that's pretty much it on that. And with that, I'd like to say Call on Yahweh Yahweh Bashem Yashar Bashem Kakadash, the honest apostle Elsgray Millstone, peace, citation, hope for elect, Shalom.